So now let's look at how to do this when we're given some other problems. So remember that this 4 in the bottom of that fraction exponent means that we have the 4th root of 625 cubed, or we can write it as the 4th root of 625 with the cubed outside the parentheses. This way we'll keep our numbers a little smaller, so let's look at it like that. So let's deal with that 625 first. It ends in a 5, so I'm going to divide by 5. And if I do 625 divided by 5, I get 125. That one also ends in a 5, so I'll divide by 5, and I get 25. That one also ends in a 5, I'll divide by 5, and I get 5. So now we know that we have the 4th root of 5 times 5 times 5 times 5, and this is still in parentheses, to the 3rd power. Now this is a group of 4. This tells me I'm looking for groups of 4. So that will come outside the radical as just a 5, but it's still in parentheses to the 3rd power. And that means I take 5 times 5 times 5, and that will give me 125. So let's look at this one. We haven't had a lot of letters yet, but remember that this y to the 8th really means that I have y here 8 times. And this 4 means I'm looking for groups of 4. So here's a group of 4 that will come outside the radical as just a y. And then here's a group of 4 that will come outside the radical as just a y. We multiply those two together and we get y squared. Now this is a little bit hard to read on the screen. I think a little bit easier in your notes. But this is the situation we have. Now back in Module 6 in Foundations of Math, we talked about what negative exponents mean. And negative exponents mean that it needs to be moved to the opposite spot in a fraction. So this is in the bottom with a negative exponent, which means we need to move it to the top. And when we move it to the top, it gets rid of the negative exponent and makes it positive exponent. Gets rid of the negative, makes it positive. If it was on the top and it was negative, we'd need to move it to the bottom, and that would make the exponent positive. So now we have the 4th root of 1296 to the 3rd power. So let's find the 4th root of 1296. So we're going to start with 1296. I'm going to start with a dividing by 2 because it's an even number. And I get 648. That's still even, so I'll divide that by 2, and I get 324. That's still even, so I'll divide that by 2, and I get 162. Let me erase this to give me a little bit more room. And this is still even, so I'm going to divide that by 2. Now 81 isn't even, but so I can try 3. And that gives me 27. I can divide 27 by 3, and that gives me 9. And I can divide 9 by 3, and that gives me 3. So I really have the 4th root of 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 3 times 3 times 3 times 3. This is all in parentheses to the 3rd power. This tells me I want groups of 4, so here's a group of 4. That will become just a 2. And here's a group of 4, and that will become just a 2. This would still be in parentheses to the 3rd power. So I have 6 to the 3rd power. That means 6 times 6 times 6. And if I do 6 to the 3rd power, I get 216 as my final answer.